In this video, I'm going to briefly explain the operational process for the Southwest Ghost Hunters Association. This is covered in our Standard Operating Procedure 100, but the issue here is our terminology often confuses people, so we wanted to kind of do a quick video to show you exactly how it works from the beginning to the end. One of the sources of the confusion is we don't believe ghost hunts and investigations are the same things. They actually have different purposes. Also, we have different kinds of ghost hunts. For example, we have one that's called an initial survey, another one that is called a site visit, and they have different purposes, different objectives between those two types of ghost hunts. So here's the easy way to explain the process. So the first step is we analyze paranormal claims coming from a location. What we're going to do is we're going to launch a ghost hunt, which is more of a recon than anything else. We're just basically finding out what's going on, photograph the location well, and bring that information back. That goes into our forum, which is locked down for members only, and the group is going to discuss the details that were found during the recon. Based on that conversation, we could order another ghost hunt, this one being called initial survey, which is like the recon, but you're just getting more information and more details than what you would get during the recon ghost hunt. From here, we're going to determine the grade of the case. Here we're using a grading system that is borrowed from the Society of Psychical Research, and it's pretty easy. There's only two grades, low grade and high grade. Based upon this, again, it goes back into the forum, and we decide whether or not we want to proceed. If the decision to proceed is there, we're going to move to the investigation. The primary purpose of an investigation is to rule out alternative explanations for paranormal phenomenon. It's the golden rule. Make sure that you eliminated all the normal elements first before you start assuming paranormal ones. So there's four big steps that we start immediately. The first two are actually researching the ghost stories, both in books and in newspapers. What we're searching for is the genesis, and that is the very first written account of the actual ghost story. We're also looking for variants of the story, elements that have changed, things that might suggest myth building is occurring. The second thing we're doing is analyzing witness testimony. We want to check for things that could cause misperception. How reliable is the actual testimony? Do we see bias? That kind of thing. Depending on what's there, we might also have to do additional interviews to get more information. Finally, we create hypotheses for alternative explanations. Once we have those, we go back to the location to test those hypotheses. In the end, all of this is to basically discover the facts about the location and the supposed paranormal activity. Once we have the facts, we can then determine if it's going to pass or fail the Gurney-Myers standard. Also, we're going to take the facts and see if we can plug them into the myth model. And if that happens, we have pretty much a very strong case that this is just a ghost story. Finally, all this again is brought back into the forum and it's discussed. And we're going to end up with one of two solutions, or actually one of three solutions. Is it solved or is it unsolved? Now, to define this a little bit better, solved are locations where the Gurney-Myers standard was not met. Additionally, there can be some other things going on. For example, witness accounts of paranormal phenomenon have been identified as explainable phenomenon and have been successfully replicated, meaning they're not paranormal. Also, we could have discovered that the stories have changed over time, which is an indication of myth building. Another big one is the historical facts do not match the account of the backstory of the reported phenomenon. In other words, the ghost story doesn't jive out in a historical context. The reported accounts lack the proper longevity. For example, if a ghost was supposed to be a person that died in the 1950s, but we can only trace the ghost story back to 2001 and there's nothing before that, it's really indicating again that this is just a myth. The reported phenomenon can also be random, and it fits within the framework of the myth building model. Phenomenon surrounding the location has been discovered to be a hoax, and unfortunately that does happen quite a bit. And the presence of alternative explanations is so great that it outweighs the possibility of a paranormal-oriented cause. It's solved. We're done with it. Now, when it comes to unsolved, we have two classifications, open and closed. Now, in closed, there could be things like insufficient data or confounding variables that prevents the replication or identifying possible alternative explanations. Typically this happens when we don't have direct access to witnesses, or there's some environmental change that has occurred that creates those confounding variables. The other thing is when the condition of the Gurney-Meyer standard is met, however, excessive myth building or other factors again are getting in the way and obscuring enough facts that we really can't continue it any further. Basically, closed means we're kind of giving up on it. Finally, there's unsolved open, and these are basically areas where there's a mystery. We haven't been able to figure it out. In cases that are unsolved open, we then move to research. Ghost hunts that are done for research purposes really boil down to two different things. The first are experiments that we do. We call these data collection ghost hunts. The second are longitudinal studies, which are studies done over a period of time. In other words, we keep going back and checking up on the place, seeing what's happening. Those are called site visits. And sometimes these studies that are done over time actually discover facts that will initiate another investigation. One of the things, if you look at some of our reports, you'll notice we're talking about the years that were conducted. You can say, wow, there was 14 years there. Does that mean we spent 14 years in the investigation? Well, not really. At one point, it was probably given an unsolved open status, and through continually investigating and doing research, another element came up and it was discovered to have an explanation, and that was determined. And overall, the entire thing is just to generate additional experiments. If you do want to see the results of our research, you can go to sgha.net, click on the research link. If you're going there to find out the latest and greatest tool in ghost hunting, you're going to be disappointed, because we do report negative results, and that's mostly of what our research has determined so far, are negative findings. But they're still important to know. And that is a very simple explanation of what SGHA does.